Should politicians be compelled to vote along party lines, or should they be able to make up their own minds about what they feel represents the community the best? Or should they be able to do whatever it is that they feel like on the day, voting however their conscience compels them to do? Well, this has recently become an issue in the light of Senator Fatima Payman of the Labour Party, who recently voted along the lines of the Greens' motion to recognise Palestine. This directly contradicted the Labour Party's stance. Now, traditionally in Labour, such a move would lead to the person being expelled, or at the very least suspended from the party. Not just excluded from some meetings, but suspended from the party itself. In Senator Payman's case, however, she was simply initially suspended from caucus meetings for 1 week, and then later indefinitely suspended from meetings, but not the party, when she doubled down on her intentions, as illustrated in an interview she gave on ABC's Insiders program.
So will you abide by the decisions of the caucus in the future?
It depends on what is brought forward in the Senate. Obviously, you and I both don't have a crystal ball, so it's really difficult to say. But if the same motion on recognising the state of Palestine was to be brought forward tomorrow, I would cross the floor.
There is a clear principle and rule in the party that you can't cross the floor. Can I ask, are you intending to leave the party over this, to quit the party?
I just want to make an interesting clarification here. What do you mean by the party? Because the party, to me, are rank and file members, are unionists, are phone bankers, door knockers, long life members of the party who put together the platform. What you're referring to is the caucus, and the decisions that the caucus make, obviously, is up to them. But I do not intend on leaving the party, because I firmly believe that I've upheld all the values of what, as the Labor Party, we should stand for.
Obviously, Labor champions diversity. Are you saying that they're not, in practice, accepting what that means in terms of votes like this?
Look, we've had diverse views in the caucus from, various people, various perspectives on the table, but I think that we need to be able to embrace that diversity of views.
Now, the Liberal Party has a slightly different approach from Labour, and the Liberal Party backbenchers can vote however they want. But the party's position binds members of the cabinet or of their shadow cabinet, and if they want to vote along the lines of their conscience or representing their community per se, they would need to resign from the front bench, at least in theory. In practice, of course, backbenchers face a lot of pressure to vote along party lines, even if they aren't necessarily compelled to do so. Now, the situation in the US is different still. In the United States, members from both parties generally follow their own party. However, there's a greater culture of defecting from party lines. For example, Senator Joe Manchin of the Democrats ultimately voted against the Democrats on many occasions, and then finally left the Democrats when he felt they no longer represented him or his state of West Virginia. Similarly with Kyrsten Sinema. By contrast, John McCain of the Republican Party voted against the Republican Party in order to preserve Obamacare. The situation in the House of Representatives is similarly fractious in the United States. It would appear in the US, both representatives and senators are more free to vote against what the general party position is. Now, the fallout from Senator Payman's votes is still to be determined, but it appears she has single-handedly undermined caucus solidarity in the Labour Party. That is, Labour's tradition of forcing all representatives and all senators to vote along party lines appears to be in jeopardy. And this is at least in part because Anthony Albanese simply hasn't disciplined Senator Payman very much. Now, there are perhaps mixed views about whether he should be disciplining her. For example, there's the argument running in caucus in the Labour Party that he should be disciplining her much more stridently. He should be taking stronger action and potentially expelling her from the party. Reportedly, this is the position of people like Penny Wong, and that in part is because Penny Wong was compelled to vote along party lines against same-sex marriage back in the day, and therefore she might be feeling a degree of resentment now that Anthony Albanese isn't forcing people to vote along party lines. On the other hand, some people have asserted that it is better if members are not compelled to vote along party lines if either their conscience would tell them otherwise, or alternatively the position of the party is clearly absurd. But of course this runs into the issue of whether or not we think that Senator Payman on this specific topic should be voting with the Labour Party or with the Greens. And I dare say that probably comes down to how one thinks about Palestine and Israel and the conflict between them. Now, Matt Canavan of the National Party had praised Senator Payman's bravery in his word, opining that when you elect a Labour Party MP, you elect a robot. Good on Senator Payman. She actually has got more courage than the lot of them combined. And I think we're a much better place here if individual senators, as a parliament, could express their views and vote accordingly in this place. In essence, Matt Canavan suggests that these senators and representatives should be able to vote against party lines if they disagree with what the party is representing or if they think the party's position is clearly absurd. By contrast, most people in the Labour Party disagree with Matt Canavan. For example, Labour MP Sam Ray defended the mandate of party unity, stating, quote, "This isn't about command and control, and is not about automatons, or whatever the thing Matt Canavan wants to carry on about. It's about the principle of the movement. The Labour Party is a collectivist party. This is at the core of the issue, the principle of collective action." Now, I'm not quite sure how you can have a collectivist party that is not command and control. The two are one and the same, and they become, to some extent, synonymous in many cases. However, she seems to think it's about a collective party action. Now, this, of course, shows the ideological difference here. You've got individual liberty on the one hand versus collectivism. This tells you, for example, what to expect with the Labour Party, but in general in both parties, and the difference they are taking here. Labour similarly regards people as indentured servants of the state or of the party collective. In this case, all individuals are bound to the party, and if they disagree with the party, they get expelled. One can't help but wonder what this implies for Australian citizens that disagree with the Labour Party. One perhaps sees the ramifications of this and the manifestations of this in Anthony Albanese's approach to so-called misinformation, which it appears, according to him, is anything that goes against what the Labour Party wants. At least that's the inference one gets from when he talks about misinformation all of the time, a term that has been so misused as to become completely meaningless. Furthermore, you've got people like Labour MP Sam Ray, who has said it all. Labour is a collectivist party. Your individual liberty and your assets and your autonomy be damned. Collective action and collectivization is what the goal is. And if they're pursuing this at party level, this is clearly their ambition for the rest of Australia. That is clearly their ideological worldview. Now, of course, another issue is that if party solidarity is enforced, it gives low-quality leaders the ability to force through harebrained or stupid policies that they believe might get them votes in their personal electorate. Because in a system like Australia's, you have to win a certain number of seats, not necessarily the majority of the vote overall necessarily, just the majority of the seats. Therefore, if you've got a position that appeals to the majority of Australians, but won't necessarily get you the seats in the key locations, you might not pursue that policy. It creates a bit of a bad incentive. Therefore, you get politicians who might self-interestedly pursue policies that are bad in principle, just because either A, they can get away with it, or because they think that it will help them in their own electorates. If politicians, by contrast, can break from party lines, then they can move more freely against bad policies. In Labour's case, if they can break from party lines, then it might break Labour's collectivist authoritarian ideology. That is, it's not just the voting behaviour that is important here, it is what it sends a message of ideologically. After all, it should be no surprise when a group that is run by collectivists in a collectivist manner then starts pursuing policies of a collectivist nature. Perhaps Senator Payman is in fact doing us all a favour, even if it's unintentional and it's indirect. Now, of course, we have the issue of what's going on between Israel and Palestine. One might well argue that Senator Payman is perhaps a little bit misplaced. Maybe we shouldn't at this point in time be rewarding Hamas for the actions they have taken. Maybe any recognition of Palestine should at least be coupled with the release of all of the hostages back to Israel. One would have thought that would be a necessary starting point. However, that's a slightly different topic in and of itself from the principle, or lack thereof, underscoring party solidarity. But do let me know your thoughts about whether Senator Payman is in the right or in the wrong, and whether the Labour Party should be enforcing this collectivist stance, or whether we might be better off if they don't.